Pakistan.
Immediately after 9/11, you had the first response by America to corner these Al-Qaeda terrorists, and you had them hold out in the Tora Bora Mountains, and there was extensive bombing that was going on.
We did not know that the translator for the commander of Central Command was actually an Al-Qaeda operative who had infiltrated the US military. We knew we had bin Laden cornered. We told him to come down the mountain, and he said through the translator, "Can you just give us until dawn? We want to evacuate the women and children." The translator convinced General Franks. What ended up happening was bin Laden dressed as a woman, and he escaped under the cover of darkness in the back of a pickup truck into Pakistan.
What is this compulsion that America has with dictators and this love story?
The United States loves working with dictators because then you don't have to worry about public opinion and you don't have to worry about the media. We essentially just purchased Musharraf. We paid tens of millions of dollars in cash to the Pakistani intelligence service. When Benazir Bhutto was in exile in Dubai, I went to see her and we heard a car pull up and she said, her exact words, "So help me God, if he came home with another Bentley, I'm gonna kill him."
Zardari,
Yeah.
her husband.
And I said to my boss afterwards, she makes $60,000 a year. She lives in a $5 million house and he has a collection of Bentleys. Aren't they ashamed of themselves?
India showed restraint after the parliament attacks, showed restraint after the Mumbai attacks of 2008.
The Indian government would have been perfectly within its rights to respond by striking Pakistan. And I remember at the White House, we expected the Indians to strike back, and they didn't.
During your time in Pakistan, 2002, 3, 4, around that time, another very dangerous threat to humanity was Dr. A.Q. Khan's.
We would have just killed him. He was easy enough to find. We knew where he lived. We knew how he spent his day, but he also had the support of the Saudi government. And the Saudis came to us and said, "Please leave him alone. We like A.Q. Khan. We're working with A.Q. Khan. We're close to the Pakistanis." This was a mistake.
Was there ever a fear that these nuclear weapons would fall into terrorist hands?
Yes. When I was stationed in Pakistan in 2002, I was told unofficially that the Pentagon controlled the Pakistani nuclear arsenal. Musharraf had turned control over to the United States because he was afraid of exactly what you just described.
A war that happened in May, India for the first time escalated it to a level where we had cruise missiles flying into Pakistan.
Literally nothing good will come of an actual war between India and Pakistan because the Pakistanis will lose. And I'm not talking about nuclear weapons. I'm talking just about a conventional war. The Pakistanis will lose.
What if with an investment of just 99 rupees and a few hours of your time on a weekend, you could learn a proven method to get a high-paying job in your dream company? Hi, my name is Sawan Kapoor and I'm India's leading career coach, and I've helped over 1 lakh working professionals, whether they are freshers or mid-stage career professionals or
Before we begin, Mr. Kiriakou, I was wondering if you could introduce yourself to our audience, your time in Pakistan and what capacity you were working in Pakistan, and then eventually your whistleblowing and then the sort of vendetta that was unleashed against you by the American intelligence setup and where you are right now. Just a quick introduction.
Sure. Thanks for that.
As long as you want.
Sure, thank you. My name is John Kiriakou. I'm a former CIA officer. I was in the CIA for 15 years. The first half of my career was in analysis. The second half was in counterterrorism operations. And in 2007, I blew the whistle on the CIA's torture program in a nationally televised interview here in the United States. I said that the CIA was torturing its prisoners. I said that torture was official US government policy. And I said that the policy had been personally approved by the president. The Obama administration, excuse me, in the form of John Brennan, went after me and they pursued criminal charges. I was indicted on 5 felony charges, including 3 counts of espionage for saying that the CIA was torturing its prisoners. Of course, I hadn't committed espionage. But those charges were dropped. But I ended up serving 23 months in prison, something that I would do again today if I had to. I have no regrets, no remorse. I did the right thing. And I think that we're seeing now that I did the right thing. It took the American people this long to come around to my way of thinking that torture is wrong, it's illegal, and should be punished. Uh, the last overseas job that I had at the CIA was in 2002. I was the chief of CIA counterterrorism operations in Pakistan. And this was the immediate aftermath of the 9/11 attacks. And in that position, my job was to locate Al Qaeda fighters and leaders and to snatch them.
Where in
And
Pakistan?
then, well, I was based in Islamabad, but I worked all over the country. Peshawar all the way to Karachi. I spent a great deal of time in Lahore and Faisalabad, Quetta, which was a rough place to live and work. Excuse me. But yeah, I finished that job and went back to headquarters. I was promoted on the strength of my work in Pakistan, and I served as the executive assistant to the CIA's deputy director for operations.
Right.
And so it was a real eye-opening experience. Now I'm an author, a journalist. I've written 8 books. I have 2 podcasts. I have 2 syndicated newspaper columns. I speak all around the world, and things have worked out, thank God.
Your voice is an authoritative voice because, I mean, you've
Thank
been
you.
in the field. You've seen geopolitics play out real time, especially in an area like Pakistan. You're also credited for the first takedowns of, I would think, a high value target of the Al Qaeda,
Yes.
Abu Zubaydah, and then
Abu Zubaydah.
which eventually led
Yeah.
to the actual whistleblowing of torture techniques used on him, which didn't really work out. Though, can you explain how that happened? How did you nab him? And then I'll go deeper into some other questions I have about Pakistan and terrorists in Pakistan.
Sure. You're right that Abu Zubaydah was the first high-value target that we were able to track and to find and to capture. We believed wrongly at the time that Abu Zubaydah was the number 3 in Al Qaeda. He was not the number 3. He had never joined Al Qaeda. He was working in support of Al Qaeda, certainly. He had founded the House of Martyrs, the Al Qaeda safe house in Peshawar. He had founded and staffed Al Qaeda's 2 training camps in southern Afghanistan, one in Kandahar, one in Helmand. So he was a bad guy, but he was not the number 3 in Al Qaeda. Nonetheless, we believed that he was. We tracked his movements, and we were this close a couple of times to capturing him. Finally, we got a beat on him because he made a mistake. We knew that he would make a mistake eventually, but he made a mistake in that he used his cell phone to access his email account.
Okay.
And so when he turned the phone on, we immediately captured its location. We sent teams, and we captured him. He was taken to a series of secret prisons over the course of the next 4 years. And then finally in 2006, he was taken to Guantanamo. He's been there ever since.
Yeah.
He's been in American custody now for 23 and a half years. He's never been charged with a crime. And I've become one of those voices calling for him to be released. He was not the number 3 in Al Qaeda. He was not guilty of the crimes that we accused him of having committed. He was not involved with the 9/11 attacks. He should be released. And he's not been. And he likely won't be.
I've heard this story of yours in various podcasts and appearances that you've done. One question that I always wanted to ask you was, this sentiment that you have about Abu Zubaydah, is it shared by, I guess, your colleagues at that time at the Pakistan's ISI, because you were working with them to nab targets, right?
Yeah, but it was a little bit more complicated than that.
You don't need a second job. You just need to learn how to talk to AI. It's 2025. AI can build a pro-level website within a couple of minutes. Meanwhile, you're still asking it how to write emails? Seriously? You've got one of the most powerful tools ever invented sitting right in front of you, and you're barely scratching the surface. Tomorrow, we kick off the 28-day AI challenge for beginners over 40. Just 15 minutes a day to level up. In 1 week, you'll feel unstoppable. In 2 weeks, you'll have your strategy. In a month, you'll wonder why you didn't start sooner. Tap the screen to join us.
You know, when Steve Jobs introduced the first iPhone, he didn't show you a mobile with a list of features. He painted a new future.
Every once in a while, a revolutionary product comes along that changes everything. Today, Apple is going to reinvent the phone. And here it is.
That day, the audience did not just witness a product launch, they felt like they were watching history unfold. This is the art of storytelling. In the 21st century, it is by far the most powerful skill you can cultivate. Because whether you're building a brand, leading a team, or pitching an idea, storytelling changes everything. Look at history. Netaji Subhash Chandra Bose did not just speak, he ignited the Azadi movement. Martin Luther King Jr. did not just speak, he ignited the civil rights movement.
Forgive me for saying this. You're Indian, of course, you're not Pakistani, but we didn't fully trust the Pakistani ISI at the time. So we never told them who the target was.
Okay.
We never said it's Abu Zubaydah, Zain al-Abidin, Muhammad
I
Hussein.
won't take umbrage to that. That's fine.
Because we were afraid that word would leak out and it would get back to Al-Qaeda. And so we just called him a big fish, which became Mr. Fish. So we believe that Mr. Fish is at this location. Let's send teams and we're gonna snatch him. So the reason why we believed that, the reason why we did that, is because we were of the belief, and in all these years of retrospect, I know that this is true, that there really were two parallel ISIs. There was the ISI that I was working with, and these guys were heroes. They were all trained at Sandhurst in the UK. They had taken classes in the US sponsored by the FBI. Their English was as good as mine. Great guys who were willing to put their lives on the line in the name of counterterrorism. But then there was another ISI made up of people with long beards who gave you a dirty look when you were walking the halls there. These were the members of ISI who had created these Kashmiri terrorist groups, or Jaish-e-Mohammed, or other groups that were blowing up Shia Muslim mosques and were attacking Americans. So we did not have rose-colored glasses on at the time, thinking that everybody in ISI is wonderful because our relationship with the counterterrorism units was wonderful.
You're right.
It was far more complicated than that.
You did have a lot of leverage over Pakistan and Pakistan's ISI. That's why I want to rewind a little bit back. I had a conversation with Mr. Scott Horton, who's written.
Oh, he's wonderful. Yes.
Yeah. He's written extensively about the war in
Yes.
Afghanistan. So I want to talk about the months immediately after 9/11, where you had the first response by America to corner these Al-Qaeda terrorists, and you had them hold out in the Tora Bora Mountains, and there was extensive bombing that was going on, and you had a lot of these high-value targets that were identified, but they just went over the passes into Pakistan and just dissolved into the ether over there. Why didn't America go into Pakistan then and get this done if you had such a close relationship with their intelligence?
Oh, that is such a good question. And I have several answers for you. Glasses on at the time, thinking that everybody in ISI is wonderful because our relationship with the counterterrorism units was wonderful.
You're right.
It was far more complicated than that.
You did have a lot of leverage over Pakistan and Pakistan's ISI. That's why I want to rewind a little bit back, I had a conversation with Mr. Scott Horton, who's written.
Oh, he's wonderful. Yes.
He's written extensively about the war in
Yes.
Afghanistan. So I want to talk about the months immediately after 9/11, where you had the first response by America to corner these Al-Qaeda terrorists, and you had them hold out in the Tora Bora Mountains, and there was extensive
Yes.
bombing that was going on, and you had
Yes.
a lot of these high-value targets that were identified, but they just went over the passes into Pakistan and just dissolved into the ether over there. Why didn't
Yes.
America go into Pakistan then and get this done if you had such a close relationship with their intelligence?
Oh, that is such a good question. And I have several answers for you. First, the United States was reactive at the time rather than proactive. You remember we waited for more than a month before we started bombing Afghanistan.
Yes.
We were trying to be deliberate. We were trying to not let emotion cloud our judgment, and we waited a month until we had proper buildup in the region, and then we began attacking known Al-Qaeda sites. Again, mostly in the Pashto areas of southern and eastern Afghanistan. We believed in October of 2001 that we had Osama bin Laden and the Al-Qaeda leadership cornered at Tora Bora.
Building a career in AI is easier once you know where to start. Scalar Masterclass on demystifying AI ML roles breaks down the various roles in AI and ML, how to map your current skills to the right path, and what tools and workflows top companies use. You'll also learn how to build projects that get you noticed and prepare for interviews strategically. Whether you are a software developer or a data pro, this masterclass is your shortcut into AI. Register now, it's free.
चंदू के चाचा ने
चंदू के चाची को चांदनी चौक में चांदनी रात में चांदी
की
अरे भाई
चमक।
चटनी वटनी तो ठीक है, लेकिन क्या चंदू के चाचा और चाची ने अपने फ्यूचर को सिक्योर करने के लिए कोई इन्वेस्टमेंट प्लान लिया है?
इन्वेस्टमेंट प्लान, फ्यूचर सिक्योरिटी, वो कैसे?
एक्सिस मैक्स लाइफ का फ्लेक्सी वेल्थ एडवांटेज प्लान with India Consumption Opportunities Fund, जिसका NFO is now live till 26th October और NAV is available at just ₹10. इस फंड के पास 7 years के बेंचमार्क रिटर्न है 22.7%।
हाँ यार, बढ़िया है भाई।
पैसा ही पैसा होगा। और ये फंड सिर्फ उन्हीं कंपनीज में इन्वेस्ट करता है जो इंडिया के कंजम्पशन बूम का पार्ट है, चाहे वो FMCG हो, ऑटोमोबाइल हो, ई कॉमर्स हो या फिर हेल्थ केयर हो। यही कंपनीज इंडिया की इकोनॉमी को सबसे ज्यादा ड्राइव करती हैं। अब सपोज अगर आपने 2005 में सिर्फ 20,000 रुपए इन्वेस्ट किए होते 10 साल के लिए ना, और नेक्स्ट 10 years एज वेटिंग पीरियड, तो आपको आज 2025 में लगभग 5.1 करोड़ रुपए मिलते।
और बेनिफिट्स का क्या है? रुको जरा, सबर करो।
अरे वो तो है ही, लाइफ कवर के साथ साथ सिस्टमैटिक विड्रॉल ऑप्शंस, अनलिमिटेड फ्री स्विचेस और डुअल टैक्स बेनिफिट, यानी यू कैन सेव टैक्सेस अंडर सेक्शन 80C एंड गेट टैक्स फ्री इनकम अंडर सेक्शन 1010D, और भी बहुत कुछ है। अब चंदू के चाचा और चाची का फ्यूचर सिक्योर करना है ना, अभी इन्वेस्ट कर।
The returns shown are based on historical benchmark index data and do not reflect actual or expected returns of Axis Max Life funds. Past performance is not indicative of future results. No warranty, express or implied, is made regarding future performance.
Yeah.
We did not know that the translator for the commander of Central Command was actually an Al-Qaeda operative who had infiltrated the US military.
Oh, wow.
And so we knew we had bin Laden cornered. We told him to come down the mountain. And he said through the translator, "Can you just give us until dawn? We want to evacuate the women and children, and then we'll come down and give up." The translator convinced General Franks to approve this idea. What ended up happening was bin Laden dressed as a woman, and he escaped under the cover of darkness in the back of a pickup truck into Pakistan. And so when the sun came up at dawn, there was no one in Tora Bora to give up. They had all escaped. And so we had to move the fight to Pakistan proper. Now, you're right. Our relations with the Pakistani government were very, very good. It was General Pervez Musharraf at the time. And look, let's be honest here. The United States loves working with dictators
Yes.
because then you don't have to worry about public opinion and you don't have to worry about the media.
Mm-hmm.
And so we essentially just purchased Musharraf. We gave millions and millions and millions of dollars in aid, whether it was military aid or economic development aid. And we would meet with Musharraf regularly, several times a week. And essentially, he would let us do whatever we wanted to do.
Yes.
But Musharraf also had his own people that he needed to deal with. He had to keep the military happy, and the military didn't care about Al Qaeda, they cared about India.
Yep.
And so, in order to keep the military happy and keep some of the extremists happy, he had to allow them to continue this dual life of pretending to cooperate with the Americans on counterterrorism while committing terror against India.
December 2001 was when the parliament attack also happened.
Yes.
In New Delhi. So this is kind of coinciding also with when your presence in Pakistan as well, or was it?
Yes.
You think 2000?
I got there. I got there 2 weeks later. Yes.
Okay. So you're running ops now. You're giving all this aid to Pakistan, but you're also seeing a lot of this being routed to terrorist groups active, but basically propped up by Pakistan and Pakistan's ISI. What was the situation like when you were in Islamabad or wherever you were in your position when Operation Parakram happened, where India and Pakistan were almost at the brink of a nuclear war back then in 2002?
I'll tell you a funny story about that.
Good work, Rahul. Our clients really loved your presentation.
Thank you so much, sir.
But how did you manage to do this last minute?
Well, I used AI and ChatGPT to create visually stunning presentations all in less than 15 minutes.
Really? Where did you learn this?
Well, it's quite simple. I attend this 3-hour AI tools and ChatGPT workshop by B10X, where I learned 10 plus AI tools for PowerPoint, Microsoft Excel, report making, coding, debugging, and other IT tasks, so that I can work 10 times faster, add more value at work, and become irreplaceable. And all this for just ₹9. The best part is I need no prior coding or AI knowledge for any of this.
That's genius.
Well, if you also want to master these 10 plus AI tools, automate 90% of your work, and excel in today's competitive workplace and get a 3x salary hike, then click the link down below and join the workshop for just ₹9.
Priya added a hotel to her flight just because it had a floating breakfast. Expedia, made to travel.
Family members had been evacuated from Islamabad. So everybody who was working in Islamabad was working alone, right? There were no family members there. Well, then there was a second evacuation. So it was only essential personnel.
Why were they evacuated? Sorry.
Because we believed India and Pakistan would go to war. Yeah. So we just evacuated. This is actually not uncommon in the American Foreign Service. I worked in the Middle East for years, and we went through at least 5 evacuations over the course of my career. Yeah. Kuwait, Bahrain, Saudi Arabia. We were constantly evacuating family members.
Okay.
So I had a very young first tour female officer working for me as my assistant. And we went to lunch one day in the embassy cafeteria. The cafeteria was enormous. It probably held 400 people, gigantic. And in fact, on weekends, it would double as a nightclub. There would be bands that came in and would play cover songs, and a disco ball would come down and spin around, and people danced. We went down at 12 o'clock noon one day for lunch. And when we got into the cafeteria, we were the only ones in the cafeteria. And she said to me, "Where is everybody?" And I said, "Are you kidding?" And she said, "No, where is everybody?" It's 12 o'clock. And I said, they've been evacuated. And she said, why? I said, because India and Pakistan are going to go to war with each other, like at any minute now. She said, they are? And I said, didn't you notice the helicopter in the parking lot? And she said, yeah. I said, and you didn't wonder what it was there for? She said, I didn't think of it. I said, it's there to rescue us. And then the Deputy Secretary of State came in and shuttled between Delhi and Islamabad and negotiated a settlement where both sides backed off, and then everybody came back. But the moral of the story is that we were so busy and we were so focused on Al-Qaeda and Afghanistan, we never gave two thoughts to India. And I'll tell you another thing. Just a couple of months later, in March of 2002, we raided a Lashkar-e-Taiba safe house in Lahore.
Okay.
And in that house, we captured 3 Lashkar-e-Taiba fighters who had with them a copy of the Al-Qaeda training manual. And it was the first time, analytically, that we were able to connect Lashkar-e-Taiba with Al-Qaeda. The very first time. I remember receiving a cable from the deputy director of the CIA for intelligence, congratulating us on finding this training manual, saying it was the very first time that we could attach the Pakistani government to Al-Qaeda.
What stopped you from going after Pakistan then? You have the first smoking gun of a inextricably linked ISI, because the LET or the JEM, JUD, the various names that they come up with, are essentially ISI proxies propped up by the Pakistani government. And now they have a direct link
Correct.
to Qaeda.
Yes.
Why didn't you ever bring this up?
That was a decision that was made at the White House. And the decision was that the relationship is bigger than India-Pakistan, at least temporarily. The relationship, we needed the Pakistanis actually more than they needed us at that point. We were happy to throw money at them. That's what they responded to. But we really needed them to let us base our drones in Balochistan, for example, have what's called a picket line. CIA officers all the way up and down the border with Afghanistan.
So from Waziristan all the way down to Balochistan.
To Balochistan. Wow. We needed a presence in Peshawar. We needed a presence in Quetta. We needed a presence in Karachi and Lahore. And we needed for them to say yes to everything that we wanted to do. And so a decision was made at the White House that if we strategically ignore this terrorism problem vis-a-vis India, the relationship would be much easier to negotiate. And so that's what we did. I'll tell you one other thing. Years later, in 2008, I had left the CIA. I had blown the whistle already, and I was working as a counterterrorism advisor to ABC News, one of the big news networks here in the United States. And I got a call saying, "Are you watching the news?" I said, "No." It was the night before Thanksgiving, so it's a major American holiday, holiday. I said, "No, I'm not watching the news. There's been an enormous terrorist attack in Mumbai. They're attacking hotels, they're attacking Jewish centers, they're attacking this and attacking that." I said, "Oh my God." They said,
video is like a conduit. It changes you.
can you come into the studio and talk about this? I said, of course. Everybody else was on vacation because it's the eve of a major holiday.
Yes.
So I jump in the shower, I shave, and as I'm getting dressed, my wife, who was still in the CIA at the time, she said, you should watch, while you're getting dressed, you should watch what the other networks are saying about this. So I go to CNN. They said, Al-Qaeda. I go to Fox, Al-Qaeda, MSNBC, it's Al-Qaeda. And these are all friends of mine who were saying it. And I said to my wife, I don't think this is Al-Qaeda. She said, wow, you better really be sure of yourself if you're going to put your reputation on the line and tell the entire country that this is not Al-Qaeda. So I drove down to ABC News to the studio, and they wired me up, and I was talking to the reporter in New York. And I said, listen, I don't think this is Al-Qaeda. I think this is the Pakistani supported Kashmiri groups. I said, Al-Qaeda doesn't care about India. They don't have any problem with the Indians. Their fight is with us.
Yes.
And he said, oh my God, he said, you're going to need to be 100% sure because everybody is saying it's Al-Qaeda. And I said, I was in the CIA long enough that I can say that I feel strongly this is not Al-Qaeda. And so I went on the air and I was the only person that said, I believe that these are Pakistani Kashmiri separatist groups supported by the Pakistani ISI.
Right.
And that turned out to be exactly the case.
Bingo.
To the point where ABC News made television commercials saying, ABC News, the Mumbai attacks, we were the only ones that got it right. But there was a bigger issue here, bigger story here. And the story was that Pakistan was committing terrorism in India, and nobody did anything about it.
In your experience, India showed restraint after the parliament attacks, right?
Greatly.
Showed restraint after the Mumbai attacks of 2008.
Yes, indeed.
But they didn't show any restraint this time around when Operation Sindoor happened in Pahalgam, where it was a 4-day high-intensity sort of war that happened. What do you think changed in the course of these 2 decades?
At the CIA, we called the Indian policy strategic patience. The Indian government would have been perfectly within its rights to respond by striking Pakistan, and they didn't. And I remember at the White House, people were saying, wow, the Indians are really exhibiting a very mature foreign policy here. We expected the Indians to strike back, and they didn't. And that kept the world from what might have been a nuclear exchange.
Right.
But India's gotten to the point where they can't risk strategic patience being misunderstood as weakness. And so they had to respond.
Right.
Now, the question now that CIA analysts are likely asking themselves did the Pakistanis learn their lesson? Not to keep poking the hornet's nest and expecting to not be stung.
I'm glad that you brought up the nuclear angle, Mr. Kiriakou, because during your time in Pakistan, 2002, 3, 4, around that time, another very dangerous threat to humanity was Dr. A.Q. Khan's.
Oh, yes.
Network, right?
Yes.
So we got to know that nuclear material was being smuggled out to the North Koreans.
Yes.
There was proliferation going on with Libyan nuclear material as well, going into Pakistan. All of that started coming out. When you were there in Pakistan, when you got this on your desk, what was the first thing you thought? You guys are going after terrorists. Here's Pakistan assembling nuclear bombs and selling it in the gray market or black market.
That's an outstanding question and a very important one. It never crossed my desk. I was specifically counterterrorism, but a colleague of mine, this was his entire life, was dealing with A.Q. Khan. Well, if we had taken, the Israeli approach, we would have just killed him. He was easy enough to find. We knew where he lived. We knew how he spent his day. But he also had the support of the Saudi government. And the Saudis came to us and said, please leave him alone. Please. We like AQ Khan. We're working with AQ Khan. We're close to the Pakistanis. They even named Faisalabad after King Faisal. Just leave him alone.
It's Hostinger's biggest ever Black Friday sale. Managed hosting for WordPress plans now start from only 139 rupees a month. Create, launch and manage your WordPress website with our
This was a mistake that the US government made, not confronting AQ Khan head on. And I'll add too, later on when I went to the Senate Foreign Relations Committee staff as the chief investigator, I worked for a man who was a journalist before going to the Senate Foreign Relations Committee staff. And he and his wife wrote a book that was first titled The Man from Pakistan. And the title was changed in the paperback version to The Nuclear Jihadist. It was the most detailed book ever written about AQ Khan. And they asked more than 24 CIA officers and United Nations IAEA officials exactly the same question that you just asked me. I was surprised that they got so many people to speak with them freely and openly. But they all told the same thing. They said that there were instructions from the White House not to attack AQ Khan. And it had to be because the Saudis were demanding it, insisting on it. We often wondered, and I have no proof, this is just my own speculation, we often wondered if it was because the Saudis were also building a nuclear capability. Yeah, I think that's something we should probably be thinking about.
Well, when you put this into context and you talk about the Saudi-Pakistan Mutual Defense Pact that was just signed a few months ago.
Yes.
Is Saudi Arabia basically calling in its investment?
I think yes. But you know, I have to laugh about this Mutual Defense Pact. I don't know if you've ever spent any time in Saudi Arabia, but
No, I haven't.
almost the entire Saudi military is Pakistanis. No Saudi is going to join the military unless they're going to make him a general. You know, there are a lot of Bedouins in the Saudi military, but you go straight in as an officer. If you're a Saudi citizen, you're going to start as an officer. There are no privates or corporals who are Saudi. They're all Pakistani, all of them. It's the Pakistanis that protect Saudi Arabia.
But how realistic is a
on
nuclear
the ground?
But how realistic is a nuclear umbrella, though? That's what is, I mean, at least some of the doomsayers in India think of it like that.
Yeah, I don't think it is realistic.
Yeah.
No,
So
I don't think it's realistic.
When this AQ Khan thing happened and it was brought up, what was this Saudi Arabia hold on America? Now you have Saudi terrorists taking out the 9/11 towers.
That's right.
Saudi Arabia actively lobbying to protect one of the most dangerous men, at least in the last quarter century, at least in this region. And then eventually Pervez Musharraf also pardoning AQ Khan, therefore ending all investigations. What is this compulsion that America has with dictators and this love story?
That is one of the most difficult questions that you could ask. You know, we like to try to convince the world that we are a shining beacon of hope for democracy and human rights and equality, and it's just simply not true. Our foreign relations, are based on our national needs at any given moment. We don't do things because they're the right thing to do. We do them because they happen to be good for us that day, which is why we get into bed with so many dictators around the world, which is why we get into bed with so many politicians who are so extreme in their personal politics that it makes no sense to the American people. Why are we in bed with Benjamin Netanyahu right now? When we've known Netanyahu since the 1980s as an extremist?
Yes.
because it's the easy thing to do, and it serves our purposes, today. That may change tomorrow, but today it's okay. I worked for an ambassador in Bahrain who was an absolutely lovely man. And he said one day, I still remember this, I was young and impressionable, and he said, our foreign policy in Saudi Arabia really is as simple as we buy their oil and they buy our weapons.
That's it.
That's it. That's it. That's the basis. He said, you spend your career in the Middle East. I've spent my entire adult life in the Middle East. He said, I don't like the Saudis. They don't like us. But we pretend to have this special relationship.
Teenagers are building businesses with AI, while the only AI you know is ChatGPT.
Let's be real. Most people over 40 use ChatGPT like it's Google. Copy, paste, ask a basic question, move on. That's not how smart people use AI. Tomorrow, we're starting the 28-day AI challenge for beginners over 40. Just 15 minutes a day to level up. In 1 week, you'll feel unstoppable. In 2 weeks, you'll have your strategy. In a month, you'll wonder why you didn't start sooner. Tap the screen to join us.
Right? Even in the American embassy, my first overseas tour was in Saudi Arabia. And I remember an enormous photograph. It had to be 2 meters across. And it was President Franklin Roosevelt and King Abdulaziz Ibn Saud, the founder of Saudi Arabia, in the back of a car together. And this was supposed to be emblematic of our special relationship with the Saudis. But when I first arrived in Saudi Arabia, I was placed in embassy housing. So I was living in an apartment in the diplomatic quarter, and I would walk a block or two to the embassy and go in the back entrance of the embassy. And every day, my first 3 days, I would say to this Saudi guard, Saudi Arabia National Guard officer standing there, Salamu alaikum. The response, of course, is wa alaikum assalam.
Yes.
He would ignore me. So the next day, I went in and I said, Salamu alaikum. And he ignored me. The third day, I went in and I said, Sabah al khair wa assalamu alaikum. Good morning and peace be upon you. He ignored me. And I stopped and I said to him, what's your problem? And he said to me in English, he said, you are hired help. We paid for you to come here and defend us. We are not friends. And I said, you know what? You're right. We aren't friends. I don't like you, and I don't like any of your compatriots. None of them.
Right.
And then I never spoke to him again. But that was the U.S.-Saudi relationship in a nutshell.
Do you think Saudi Arabia knows this now? Because with this mutual defense pact, again, I keep coming back to the nuclear thing and them sort of, basically seeking nuclear deterrence with the help of Pakistan. Then it appears with this Trump regime that a certain amount of American retrenchment has happened in the region, where it's almost like a hemispheric defense now that America is focusing on. So Saudi Arabia always had the US for its back. Now that US is not, at least it appears that it's not highly dependent on Saudi oil, Saudi energy. Do you think Saudi Arabia is doing this as an insurance pact?
Absolutely, yes. And it's not just Saudi Arabia, it's Kuwait as well. Kuwait last year made a purchase of, made a sale of oil to China, and for the very first time ever took payment in yuan. Yeah. First time ever that payment was not in dollars. So I think everybody is coming around to the notion that here in the United States, we're sitting on an ocean of oil. Okay, we have shale oil enough to last us 500 years. We don't need Middle Eastern oil. We buy it because it's good for relations.
Yes.
Because we buy it and then they buy our weapon systems.
Right.
So we continue to do that. But when push comes to shove, we don't need the Saudis anymore. We don't. And so they're hedging their bets. They're improving their relations with China. They're improving their relations with India, which is a huge market and in need of oil.
Yes.
And you know, if the Indians are going to have problems, especially from the United States, buying Russian oil or Russian natural gas, oh, they should just buy it from Saudi Arabia. It makes it even easier.
Right. Yeah,
So
absolutely.
I think we're
Yeah.
seeing a transformation here in the way the world
A very
operates.
dynamic geopolitical shift is being viewed here. That's why conversations
Agreed.
like with you, someone in the field and who has historical context. I mean, it's fantastic. You know, so we had this hot war with Pakistan in May, and it happened, and the nuclear question came up again. And I thought, what better person than you to sort of, you know, illuminate a little bit more about Pakistan's nuclear weapons and everything. So you were there on the ground in Pakistan in 2002, 2003. We also saw Pakistan sort of lurch into almost like a civil war with the various terrorists it had propped up in its backyard. You know, was there ever a fear that these nuclear weapons would fall into terrorist hands?
Yes. When I was stationed in Pakistan in 2002, I was told unofficially that the Pentagon controlled the Pakistani nuclear arsenal, that Musharraf had turned control over to the United States because he was afraid of exactly what you just described. But the Pakistanis in the intervening years, and remember, I was there 23 years ago. Over the last 23 years, the Pakistanis have come to say that is absolutely not true. The United States has nothing to do with the Pakistani nuclear arsenal, that Pakistani generals are the ones that control it. So I don't know, if that's true, then I would be very worried about who is in charge politically in Pakistan.
No,
You know, for example, Imran Khan, I can't believe that I forgot his name.
Who's in jail? A popular
who's in
leader
jail?
Yes, yeah.
Right, and still wildly popular.
Wildly, yeah.
He told us when he was still the prime minister, he said, listen, I've got this political situation here domestically. I'm going to start blaming you for everything. And the ambassador laughed and said, we get blamed for everything anyway, so we don't care. So everything that happened, it was the United States' fault. And it was the US, they turned their backs on us. And the US did this and the US did that. And then they arrested him anyway.
Guess what? 3 hours. In just 3 hours, I learned how to use ChatGPT and AI tools that have made me a star performer in my company. Now I can create 1 month's Instagram posts like these in 5 minutes. Make complex Excel reports like these in 5 minutes.
So he got a message out to the US government saying, can you help me get out of this? And we went to Jemima Goldschmidt, his whatever her name was, ex-wife. And she went to Pakistan and asked them if they would release him. And they said no. So, like you, I'm worried about continued disagreement in Pakistani politics that has the potential to spill into the streets, because the Pakistanis have a tendency to get themselves spun up. And people die during demonstrations, and there are attacks against political figures and assassinations, and the country is not known for its transformative, leaders making positive decisions. I'll tell you another thing. When Benazir Bhutto was in exile in Dubai, I went to see her with a senior officer. I went as the note taker, and she lived in this $5 million palace on the Gulf. And we were sitting in the front room, the salon of the house, and we heard a car pull up. And she said, her exact words, "So help me God, if he came home with another Bentley, I'm going to kill him."
Zardari.
Yeah.
Her husband.
And I said to my boss afterwards, she makes $60,000 a year. She lives in a $5 million house, and he has a collection of Bentleys. Aren't they ashamed of themselves? Like, how can they go back to Pakistan and look the Pakistani people in the face when their people don't even have shoes and enough food to eat? Like, I understand corruption is a problem there, but that level of corruption?
Yeah.
Come on. Well, those are the kinds of politicians that the Pakistani people have to deal with.
You talked about Benazir Bhutto. You talked about Zardari. Zardari is the current president over here.
Yeah.
And
Yep.
now going back to the nuclear issue, in this war that happened in May, India for the first time escalated it to a level where we had cruise missiles flying into Pakistan with direct hits
Yes.
at the time. And from the Indian side, this constant line is said from the prime minister level up. He says that we called their nuclear bluffs. You said that you were told unofficially that America knew where the nukes were. Do you think Americans told India that the control of Pakistani nukes also lies with America?
I doubt it. I doubt it because of the vociferousness with which the Pakistanis have come out publicly and said that they control the nukes. But I can tell you definitively that the State Department was telling both sides, if you're going to fight, fight. Keep it short and keep it non-nuclear. If nuclear weapons are introduced, the whole world is going to change. And so I think there was restraint on both sides. The Pakistanis need to come to a policy conclusion that there's nothing positive for them in fighting India. Nothing, literally nothing good will come of an actual war between India and Pakistan because the Pakistanis will lose. It's as simple as that. They'll lose. And I'm not talking about nuclear weapons. I'm talking just about a conventional war. The Pakistanis will lose.
Right.
And so there's no benefit to constantly provoking the Indians.
Right. Last question on the nuclear issue. I promise I'll move on after that. Okay, let's nix the control part. You doubt that the actual control, but there was a New York Times article written by the New York Times editor at that time for national security that that President Bush had folded in hundreds of millions of dollars in grants to Pakistan to safeguard their nuclear assets. The New York Times knew about this program, but decided to sit on it for a number of months before they finally published it. So even if they don't control it, did they give technology to safeguard it?
Most likely, yes.
And what would that technology be?
That I don't know. It's not my area of expertise, and I couldn't speculate. But I will tell you that the fact that the New York Times sat on the article is a way of confirming its truth. And what I mean is, when one of the big outlets, the New York Times, the Washington Post, the Wall Street Journal, the Los Angeles Times, or one of the big broadcast news networks, when they come across information like this, it's big and it involves classified information, they always ask the White House to confirm or to deny. If the information is truly classified and it's sensitive, the National Security Advisor will ask for a meeting. Sometimes the meeting is with the president and the head of the newspaper. Usually it's the National Security Advisor. And they'll say, look, yes, it's true, but it's so sensitive that if you publish it, it will put lives in danger. Almost always, they'll sit on the article until enough time passes that people aren't in danger anymore. The fact that they sat on the article is confirmation that it was true.
Now, let's go back to your time when you were there and you caught Abu Zubaydah. This, I'm sure you would be in line for promotion after capturing number 3 in Al-Qaeda, right?
Yes.
What happened after that? What's the story after that?
Well, I got a medal. I got a huge award. And then I was denied promotion. And I was shocked. And I shouted at my boss, what do I have to do to get promoted around here? Do I have to catch bin Laden? I just caught the number 3 in Al-Qaeda and I'm denied promotion? Well, it turned out that the reason why I was denied promotion was that as soon as I got home from Pakistan, they asked me if I wanted to be trained in the torture techniques so I could be used to torture prisoners. And I said, no, I have a moral and ethical problem with it. I believe it's illegal. I want nothing to do with it. Of the 14 people that they asked, I was the only one who said no. And so the director of the Counterterrorism Center, Jose Rodriguez, a monster, said that I had, his words, displayed a shocking lack of commitment to counterterrorism. So in the meantime, I got the job of a lifetime, and I became the executive assistant to the deputy director for operations. And I said, I was passed over for promotion. He said, what? He said, how? And I said, Jose said that because I wouldn't torture these guys. He said, I'll promote you. And he just signed a promotion. And so I was promoted instantly. So there were those in the
Setup.
Yeah, in the chain of command that were thinking correctly on this issue of torture.
Right.
But at the end of the day, they were shunted aside, and a decision was made that torture was going to be an official policy.
Right. But you blew the whistle on it.
I did. You know, the truth, though, is that I just assumed somebody else would blow the whistle. And so I remained silent. And then I resigned from the CIA in 2004. My resignation was effective in 2005. And still nobody would blow the whistle. And so finally in 2007, a reporter called me. And I decided I was going to do it. I was just going to tell the truth. And so that's what I did.
And then one would think that you would be a hero for free speech and blowing the whistle on this. But then the Obama administration, ironically, a campaign that was run on hope and change, and maybe shedding some light and some transparency.
Right.
They are the ones who actually went ahead and prosecuted you.
Yes, indeed. For a number of reasons. First of all, it was John Brennan. John Brennan, who at first was the Deputy National Security Advisor for Counterterrorism and then the CIA director in the Obama administration. It was John Brennan who specifically went after me. John and I always hated each other. I've known John Brennan for 35 years. I've always hated the guy. I thought he was in over his head intellectually. Yeah. And he was one of the founders, one of the fathers of the torture program.
Vikram found the perfect package in seconds, so he could spend hours and hours relaxing. Expedia, made to travel.
And so you had a president who had 2 years of experience. Can you imagine that? To think about that for a moment. He was in the U.S. Senate for 2 years. That was his only qualification to be president of the United States. And so he was very susceptible to the advice and the biases of the people around him. Well, John Brennan was his lead intelligence advisor. And John Brennan said, we need to stop these leaks because we're going to start doing things like using drones to kill people. We need to put this guy Kiriakou in prison. And so that's exactly what they did.
He didn't have any experience. He was in Saudi Arabia as well when he was in the CIA, right?
Oh, Brennan had lots of experience. Obama had no experience. Obama was in the Senate for 2 years before he was elected president and had never, ever read a classified CIA document. He had never seen one. Yeah, utterly unprepared to become president.
And what led to eventually you spending 24 months in jail? I know I'm fast forwarding a bit, but
that's okay. What they started doing was they knew I hadn't committed espionage. And so the espionage charges were dropped eventually. They waited until I went bankrupt and then they dropped the charges. But what they did is they tapped my phones and they went through my emails, 3 years worth of emails, and they were able to find one single email where I confirmed the surname of a former colleague. And they said, aha, that's a crime. And so that's the crime that I pleaded guilty to. So they offered me 30 months in prison. I would serve 23. And I said to my attorneys, I'm going to turn it down. I want to go to trial. I haven't done anything wrong. And they said that if I went to trial and I was convicted, it would be a lot longer than 23 months. I said, realistically, how much time am I looking at? If I lose, they told me 12 to 18 years.
Yeah.
And so I took the deal.
Where would they bring the trial though? In America?
Yeah, it was in the